Hello, everyone. Um, as Danielle said, I am Bridget Crokus. I am the Deputy Oil Spill Response Coordinator for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service here in Alaska, and actually just right down the road here in Anchorage. So I am going to talk to you about a handy tool that was developed to be used by early oil spill responders, and that's the Alaska Spill Response Wildlife ID Aid. Get closer here. Just snug right up on this mic. Thank you. Um, so like I said, I'm with the Fish and Wildlife Service, but during my talk, I'm going to be referencing the wildlife agencies. And what I'm talking about there are the state and federal agencies here in Alaska that manage wildlife. So that's the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, like my colleague Jeanette Ellis here in the audience, and National Marine Fisheries Service, or NOAA Fisheries, as you might know it better by. So simply put, getting early wildlife observations during an oil spill is critical to the success, the overall success of a spill response. Knowing what wildlife is in the area of a spill can help plan the entire spill response activities and also give us specific information about wildlife response strategies that we might need to start considering early in the process. But the wildlife agencies were noticing something is that we were getting a lot of reports of no wildlife being observed near an oil spill. And we live in Alaska, and we felt like that was odd. So I'm here to talk to you about a tool that we developed to maybe lessen the frequency of those occurrences of no wildlife observed observations, talk about the factors that might have been going into that, talk about how the aid works and who's been getting it and how it's been working. So when I say wildlife in Alaska, what do you think of? My guess is it's going to be these images of iconic wildlife that are popping up here. Our really beloved species, and a lot of them, large congregations of bears and salmon and whales and all the cool stuff we have. But during a spill, we were hearing there's just no wildlife around. And, the truth is, during an oil spill, it's probably not happening near mass migrations or congregations of animals, but there's going to be at least something around. This is Alaska, after all. So, why was that? First, let me talk about scale. This is a depiction we're all pretty familiar with here. I don't have to tell you all that the scale of Alaska presents a lot of logistical challenges. It is an enormous place and it has limited road system. So when an oil spill happens, not near the road system, it's going to take hours or even days for trained wildlife observers to arrive near spill. And so the wildlife agencies would really like to rely on those early spill responders to provide observations about the wildlife they're seeing near the spill. And when I say early spill responders, I'm primarily talking about the actual oil spill removal organizations, or OSROs, as you'll see on several of my slides. The US Coast Guard, could be the EPA, or industry. But the problem is that those responders are focused on, rightfully so, on the containment and recovery of that oil. And some of those folks might actually not be familiar with the wildlife in Alaska. So all of these could be contributing to why we're getting these reports of no wildlife. But we talked to those early wildlife responders, and we actually found there were two main reasons that we probably weren't getting reports of wildlife. The first one being that many spill spill responders felt that their wildlife identification skills just weren't very good. The second was that they felt that they needed a lot of time to make good wildlife observations. And this was an aha moment for the Fish and Wildlife Service because spill responders use a variety of tools and tactics and job aids to help them get their jobs done in an efficient and effective manner. So what if we were able to create a job aid that allowed early responders to take a wildlife minute to just look around and mark down the wildlife they were seeing? So it's one thing to have an idea for a job aid. It's another entirely to figure out what exactly that aid is going to look like, who was going to make it, who's going to pay for it. But over the course of about a year, the Fish and Wildlife Service was able to do all of those things. First, we knew that we didn't have staff or the time to devote to creating a polished professional product. We also didn't have the money to contract that work directly. But what we did have access to was the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Directorate Fellows Program. This is an 11-week fellowship program for undergraduate and graduate students in natural resources. So in 2019, we put the call out through the program and we found a graduate student in Fairbanks, Claire Montgomery, that was really eager to take on this challenge. For her project, we envisioned that Claire would create a product. We weren't sure what it was going to be, but a product that would allow her, allow folks to quickly categorize the wildlife they were seeing into groups instead of trying to get people to identify wildlife to species. And we started with just thinking about birds. We knew we wanted the product to be durable, reusable, easy to use. And that is a lot to ask of somebody on an 11-week fellowship. So we did have some money to hire a graphic designer, Terra Graphica, to help her with the layout. And Claire had to collaborate with a lot of people during her 11 weeks. For instance, in her discussions with our wildlife rehab partners, she was able to come up with the groups of birds that we use in the aid. More on that in a minute. In working with our sister agencies, ADF&G and NOAA Fisheries, we realized that we could expand this product to include other animals, not just birds, that early responders would be likely to see. We talked to industry and about what would be useful for their on-the-ground responders to have. And we took those suggestions and incorporated them into the final product. And she talked to a number of biologists and experts. She even reached out to David Sibley to ask if we could use his illustrations in the aid, and he said yes. And yeah, it's that David Sibley. So that was pretty cool. So at the end of her 11 weeks, we had a print-ready electronic version of this guide, but we didn't have any money to print it. And that's where our next collaborator comes in through the Department of the Interior. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is a bureau of DOI, as I will call it. And in 2015, DOI created a program called the Inland Oil Spill Preparedness Program to facilitate DOI participation in spill planning and response. And one way they do that is by providing funding for DOI projects that improve preparedness and response to protect the nation's natural and cultural resources and other interests. And we thought that our product perfectly fit that bill. And so we put in for a proposal and DOI agreed. And we were given enough money to be able to print 2,000 copies of this in the summer of 2000. I worked with the government printing office and a printer to turn that PDF into a durable, reusable field tool that can get wet, muddy, frozen. You can bend this thing. We put this really cool lanyard on it so you can wear it around your neck or attach it to a field bag. And I think it's pretty cool. But enough about how we made it. And I bet you want to know how it works. So like I said, the aid focuses on categorizing animals into general groups. And for birds, there are 6 general categories, and marine mammals, there are 7. And why did we pick these particular groups? Well, for birds, you probably can't see. So we have the shorebirds, the long-winged seabirds, my personal favorite, the football-shaped seabirds, the waterfowl, birds of prey, and then land birds. And for marine mammals, we have sea otter or river otter. I know, we'll get to that in a second. Seals, sea lions, walruses, and whales and dolphins. So for the birds, we grouped them this way because even though there might be a lot of size variation in the group shorebirds, the way that you capture and then subsequently care for those birds is very similar in that group, more similar than, say, waterfowl. And so that's how we ended up with the grouping for birds. For marine mammals, we did it a little bit differently and based those categories on similarity of appearance. And so instead, we provide information on how to tell the difference between seals, sea lions, and walruses, for instance. So as an example page, this is the shorebird page. And it, like all of, all the pages are laid out similarly. You have one page that provides on the left-hand side some basic physical characteristics, and the right-hand side talks a little bit more about the habitat and behavior. So for instance, we talk about the shape and appearance, and this can include things like leg length, bill length, what the wings look like, generally speaking. The size range of the bird, which is, we have this pretty cool diagram. What do you call it? Scale. That's what I'm looking for in the bottom corner that uses common birds so it goes from like a small songbird up to a goose. So the size, and there's a raven in there, sizes of birds that people are generally familiar with. It includes general habitat and behavior. So where are you most likely to find this group of birds? And then what are they doing when you do see them there? And all this information is there to help those early responders decide what group of birds they're looking at. And when they decide that, hey, I'm looking at some shorebirds, they can just, with a permanent marker, write in the upper right-hand corner directly onto the aid. The marine mammals pages, like I said, compare similar looking animals. And so this page is the sea otter or river otter page. And I know you're saying river otters are not marine mammals, it's in their name. And that is sort of true, except that in Alaska, you actually do find river otters in marine environments and in similar habitats to sea otters quite often. And by taking just a little bit of time to note the differences of their appearance in water, and if you're lucky enough to see them on land, you can easily distinguish them. And then the last page of the aid has a tally page. And here is where you can summarize everything that you've been looking at. So again, using a permanent marker, you can make your notes about your counts, anything you saw, notice, like, oh, whoops, birds were swimming in an oil sheen. Okay, that's really good to know. And then you can add the date, and you can use this to summarize a verbal report to somebody, or you can take a picture and send it to somebody. We would love that. And then when you're done with it, you can use alcohol or hand sanitizer like we all have with us these days and wipe it clean and reuse it. But really the best way is to just show you. This is going to be a video clip. It might be a little soft, so you're going to have to listen. I don't know how the volume's going to work. It is 1.5 minutes long, but it does a really good job of bringing all of this together. It comes from a longer 20-minute tutorial on the use of the aid and general wildlife identification. And I highly recommend that you all take 20 minutes on one of your lunch breaks and check out this video because it is really good for basic wildlife.
How to record wildlife observations on the aid. First, find the group that best describes the animal or animals you see. Next, add the approximate number of animals you see belonging to that group. For example, 10 to 15 shorebirds. Other observations about the animals you see that you think might be helpful for wildlife response planning can also be written on the page. For example, a quick note describing that the shorebirds you saw flew over spill area helps us determine which wildlife response strategy to start mobilizing. As you continue to look around the spill area, proceed with recording all the animals you see. Again, additional notes are encouraged. For example, knowing that there are seabirds nesting near the spill may prompt us to mobilize a different response strategy than we would if birds appeared to only be flying around the spill area. Continue to record observations, such as a seal swam into boomed area. And finally, tally up all your approximate counts of each group of animal on this page. Add additional notes that the seabirds you saw were nesting near the spill, and that young were present, and that a seal swam into boomed area. Write the date, and report your observations to Incident Command.
So pretty simple layout, easy to use. I'm a big fan. So in the summer of 2000, we had enough money to print 2,000 copies, and we originally targeted the distribution to those early spill responders. So primarily the U.S. Coast Guard, oil spill removal organizations, and industry. We also provided them to state and federal agencies that do spill response. They're now included pretty as just standard in wildlife response kits for oil spill removal organizations and industry. And for instance, the Alyeska Vessels of Opportunity program, we provide them when we do training with them. So pretty much everybody in the Vessel of Opportunity program that could be called on to do wildlife response in Prince William Sound has a copy of this. We've been doing the outreach and training on this since 2020. And the good news is that it seems to be working. We are getting far fewer reports of no wildlife observed. Instead, we're starting to hear more frequently things like several ducks outside boomed area, gulls flying in the vicinity of the spill, or sea otters on the other side of the harbor. And even these simple observations give us really important information about what wildlife response techniques might be considered for the spill and what just general response techniques might be considered. The bad news is that I am almost all out of those 2,000 copies. But the good news is that I've been working with Scott Piga from Oil Spill Recovery Institute, who spoke with you earlier tonight, for OSRI to provide us funding to have more of these aids printed. And because the federal process is so slow, it has taken a while, but as soon as we receive those funds, we're going to be able to have another run of these printed, and I'm really looking forward to getting them out there. So with a lot of collaborators, we were able to make a really great field aid, and that is awesome. But it's no good if people aren't using it. And so we are getting the word out about how to use the aid and how important those early wildlife observations are. But this is a culture shift. Early spill responders are not used to providing wildlife observations. And so it's going to take time, but we are seeing a change, and that's really encouraging. So thank you for having me here tonight to continue to get that word out. Please spread the word to everyone you know involved in oil spill response. And if you would like hard copies, please, you can email me at this address and I will add your name to a list of folks I'm keeping so that as soon as I have my stash replenished, I can start getting them out to folks. And then check out the 20-minute tutorial when you have a minute. I think it's pretty nifty. Thank you very much. And I do have a few copies and some markers and things if you want to play around with them afterwards.
I had a thought of doing this presentation to all the SERVs trainings. They have to drill every spring and fall, and these are the people who are supposed to be out there. And then my other thought I had is that maybe harbor masters had a couple of copies.
Yes, and some do. We don't have them to every harbor master, but yes, we have expanded greatly the folks that get them. I appreciate your input. Have we done a specific training at SERVs, Jeanette? I don't know if we've done one specifically for SERVs. We do a lot of trainings though, which I'm lucky that, I mean, it's lucky that we get to, but I don't think we've had any that have, and we take them to drills. I've also given them to pilot associations. I've had some cargo vessels that actually have them, and I did get a report when a cargo vessel was moving through Cook Inlet and it had a really slow leak of hydraulic oil, and so they were told that they needed to be on special lookout for wildlife, and they were using it, and it was awesome. I was really excited.
Thank you. I have a copy of your book. I also want to acknowledge the very good work that Alyeska has for their wildlife response program. Is probably on a par with the programs that exist in California, which is widely recognized as the best in the nation. The wildlife teams that work here practice with equipment, they get specific training, they're integrated into the unified command, and their training goes well beyond what's in the book. I wonder if the other OSROs, have you been actually out with some of the other OSROs beside Alyeska to see how they use it, how that information actually gets written in the field, brought back to the unified command where decisions are made? No use having a book that sits on a shelf.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. We have been working with some other OSROs to provide that that in-person training. We've done some virtually. I don't know how frequently they're actually marking down and using the books, but they are included in their wildlife response kits. And we are starting to get better information. Thank you very much for acknowledging the Alyeska program. They are the gold standard of wildlife response in Alaska. And we're really happy to work with them. They provided a lot of great input for this tool. And we're lucky that we have a good working relationship with them and we can provide this training among other trainings for those crews. They're really amazing. And thank you for being part of it.
We have 2 online comments. Many thanks for the great presentations. I appreciate the opportunity to hear the results of all this great work. And this is all really amazing work. Thank you for the wonderful presentations.
Thanks, Bridget.
Hey, everybody. That concludes Science Night. I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. I want to thank our board members for being here and for their continued support of this event. And I just really want to thank our presenters for joining us. Can we have another round of applause for them? Okay, safe travels, everybody, and happy holidays.